Hey, I'm Benjamin Verbicek, and I'm the lead pastor of Community Evangelical Free Church. I'm also the managing editor for Gospel-Centered Discipleship, and I'm coming at you with the next installment of the Writer's Coaching Corner, where we talk about one article, specifically one paragraph from one article that appeared on our website the previous month, and we talk about what's going on helpfully in that article, and how do we get some of that writerly goodness into our own prose. And so the principle we're talking about this month is this: good writing, foregrounds, punch. That can maybe sound a little too violent, punch, but just kind of pizzazz, or maybe a less flamboyant way to say it would just be, it foregrounds what's important. Now, kind of classically in journalism, they might call it burying the lead, which is to say it pushes to the bottom what would be important for readers to know right at the beginning. I mean sort of that when I say foreground punch, to not bury the lead. But I mean something more in the way that the article is presented, in its title, in how it leads off, and all of that together I'm kind of summarizing as foregrounding punch. And so the example I want to give comes from this article that appeared in January 11th from Timothy Wei. Timothy is a friend of GCD that's kind of written a couple articles for us over the years. And he actually is Dr. Timothy Wei. And typically when we're talking doctor and writing, we're talking theology, PhDs, something like that. He's actually a professor, or was a professor, of mechanical, but definitely engineering at a large university. And that comes out in the introduction here, but that's not what we foregrounded. Look at here what we did with the title. It says, "The speck you see in their eye might be the exact log in yours." So you can hear, hopefully, the allusions to the famous passage from Jesus about the speck and the log. Here's how the article begins. I'll give the first two paragraphs here. "In a time when the world's view of conflict resolution seems to be defined by winning and humiliating your adversary, there is a lesson that I continually apply in order to try to bring grace and healing to tense situations." So he's promising here there's something that's going to help the world we all live in. It says, "This post continues themes I've written about before, the themes of practical proverbs for leadership and life. They come from lessons I've learned over my career as a leader in secular higher education, working for major universities and large corporations. In this installment, the focus is on the importance of and tools for Christ-centered evaluation of yourself first and others second." And then he goes on and he frames the proverb this way: "The failings of others that bother us most are those of which we are most guilty." So there it is. There's the article. Now, what I want to point out when I say foreground, the punch, is that it wasn't foregrounded before. So I'm going to flip over. This article wasn't published this way. I just framed it into kind of our website so you can see what it looked like. The original title was "Grace in Leadership Through Inspection and Introspection." So that's the title that was originally there. And these huge nouns of inspection and introspection and grace through leadership. Now, that communicates something of what the article is about. It's a true statement about what he's learned in life and leadership and through Christian ministry. But this idea of introspection and inspection is not, shall we say, as catchy. Now, if you look at the first paragraph, as it was before, it begins, "This post continues on a theme of practical proverbs for leadership and life, lessons I've learned." So it leads with, hey, I've said something before and I'm doing it again. Now, if you're a New York Times columnist, or you're a very popular blogger and you're doing Substack posts and everybody's listening to yours and it's an actual conversation, then maybe that's a catchy way to start. But Tim writes for us probably only 2-3 articles over 2 years. And so to say he's continuing with another installment wasn't what I thought was the most helpful thing to foreground, because anybody, I'll say it this way, I'm probably the only one who remembers the last installment, which is not to say he's a bad writer. He's a good writer with a good story and good lessons for us. It's just they're so infrequent. That was not the thing. That was not the punch we wanted to foreground. And so that's why, again, going back to this article, we retitled it, "The speck you see in their eye might be the exact log in yours." And that was a title that caught a few people, and they shared it, and it got a lot of views, partly because of the title, but once you get into the article, I think there's real substance there. He tells a couple really great anecdotes about how the lesson worked out in its life. It's got biblical engagement that's good. And so it's a good article, but I think the way it got positioned was positioned in such a way that the foreground was the punch, the lead wasn't buried. And so that's what I wanted to talk about and encourage you to get in your own writing. I have 2 books over here, and as I do from time to time, I plug my own resources because, right? For all the reasons we plug our own resources. But this book is called Blogging for God's Glory in a Clickbait World. John Beeson is a friend of mine, and we wrote it together. And so I'm really actually holding it up sort of in some ways as an anti-example of what is this other book I read recently called Smart Brevity. Now, I'm going to point that out in a minute, but I want to go, we have a glossary at the end here. And we put the definition of clickbait, which I want to read to you here, because I think the things I'm saying with foregrounding punch are in tension with what I've got in print about not being merely clickbait. So the definition of clickbait that we use here is this. It's a pejorative term for content, especially titles and images, designed to get visitors to click. The term is loosely drawn from fishing, where shiny bait attracts the attention of a fish but conceals the hook to some degree. What constitutes clickbait is in the eye of the beholder. However, standard tropes are readily identifiable. And I wanted to then click over to all sorts of websites that lead with clickbait, but then I realized I have no idea what they're going to put up when I click over there, because I'm going to go to one website and there's going to be all these ads and all these things that promise something, but then all of a sudden there's pictures of women not wearing enough clothes, and then I've got it here on this video. So we're not doing that, because by definition, clickbait is this thing that, like, you went for one thing, but you got something else. What I'm saying with foregrounding punch is something very different. It's not clickbait if it delivers. If you promise something and you deliver on that promise, then that's something different than clickbait, which is saying something shiny and flashy and punchy, but then it's really just a hook to then sell you something else. And so that for me is a stark difference. And so this is a book called Smart Brevity. It came out, 3 authors. They're journalists, they're writing online, and they start with kind of this provocative statement in the book that they realized most of what they were writing, because they're seeing the metrics like some of you are. Sadly, we're all seeing on our own websites how few people are reading, but not specifically even how few clicks they were getting. What they were able to do with deep dive metrics was to find out how little people were reading of what they are actually even clicking on. And so they came up with this style of writing which they referred to as smart brevity. Now, truth be told, I chafe against it because it's full of bullet points, and it foregrounds so aggressively what it's trying to say that I find the articles are no longer aesthetically pleasing to the eye and the ear and the heart. However, what they learn here and teach here is really helpful. And as far as bringing it into good writing. Now, bad writing is just going to make even worse. But good writing, I think, has much to learn from a book like this. And so I just throw this out to you that, you know, it might be something you think about in your own writing. I know we do a sermon debrief at our church on Mondays at 12. And so a bunch of us sit around and we talk about the sermon. There's men and women there sometimes, and it's a different group, but some of them are always the same. But there's one guy in particular who always challenges me that I like your sermon, talk good things. I just wish you spent another hour on your outline, on your title, on your packaging of what you taught, so that people could absorb it better. And he's been doing this to me for probably a year, and periodically, maybe most months at least, maybe not every week. And slowly it's sinking in more and more, and I see what he's talking about. And so that's really my encouragement to you, having looked at a ton of articles on our website, would just be to say, once you've written that article and you feel good about it, could you not then spend another half hour thinking through the title, thinking through what you lead with in that introduction in such a way to foreground punch? Not as clickbait, but as a way, this good faith handshake, so to speak, to the reader that you're going to deliver something worth their time to read. So that's the installment for this month. Hope to see you next month on the Writer's Coaching Corner.